Hey, what's up? My name is PJ, and in this video we're going to do part 1 of a new series I want to do called Learning with Lou. Hope you enjoy. Alright Lou, so what sort of stuff do you want to shoot? Like, what do you want to get out of your photography?
Obviously going to Byron Bay, I think that first off, scenic and landscape shots are going to be a big thing. But then also a few of my family as well, seeing as I'm going away with them.
Yep.
So it'd be nice to be able to do maybe some portraits and things like that as well.
You're also into like your motorbikes?
In the long run, 100%. I
Yep.
love motorbikes, so I'd love to be shooting all sorts of things with those, and a lot of adventure photography.
Yep. Travel, lifestyle, sort of stuff.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, we're going to go through a few things quickly in this video. I've got a few notes here, but we're going to be mainly winging it because I've never taught this stuff to someone before. But it's just the basics, and I think it'll be the best 15-minute crash course that you can get to at least
I think it will be.
to just go out and experiment and start taking some photos. So I guess the very first thing that we'll talk about will be exposure. So the exposure is basically the amount of light that you let into the camera for a single frame. So it's made out of 3 different components. Have you done any research at all?
Not at all.
So the way that the DSLR camera works is it's got a sensor in there, and it's got a mirror and all sorts of stuff inside, but for all intents and purposes, it's a shutter, like a blind. Like, it opens and closes and lets light in to the center. So when it opens, the duration that the shutter is open for, we call that the shutter speed.
Yep.
I'm going to butt in there real quick. The angle that I had for the diagrams that I was drawing, it didn't quite work out. So everything that I draw, I've uploaded to Dropbox. You can download it in the link below, open it in a second window, I'll print it out. Cheers. All right, so if you think of exposure like a triangle, there's 3 different components that make up the exposure of a single frame. You've got your shutter speed over here. You've got your aperture over here. Oops, aperture. You might have heard that word before.
A little bit, yeah.
And down here you've got your ISO. So the shutter speed, like we mentioned, the camera sensor is this big. The shutter opens up, lets the light in, and closes again. So obviously the longer that it's like a curtain, right? The longer that curtain's open, the longer light's getting into the sensor, the more light you're going to have in a shot. Pretty self-explanatory. So we measure it in fractions of a second. So like, let's say we've got 1/15th of a second.
Yep.
1/30th of a second. 1/60th of a second. 1/25th of a second. So we talk about light in stops. If you want to add more light to the camera, you add another stop of light, which basically means you're doubling the amount of light. And it's really simple. You literally just double the number, and you're adding a stop of light. So if this is...
And are they settings that are on the camera to choose from and to play around with?
Yep. All these 3 are the 3 settings that you change on the camera to affect the exposure. Awesome. And they balance. So if you have less of one, you have to have more of another, which is why it's a triangle like this.
Yeah, awesome.
So up the top here, let's say we've got... Oops. I'm just cooking it today. More light.
It's still early.
And less light. It is early. It's only like 8:30 in the morning. Less light. So 1/15th of a second, that's a longer time with that shutter open, right? So more light's getting in. But if it's 1/25th of a second, that's a quicker one. So less light's getting in. Pretty self-explanatory. So if your photo is too bright, would you do a longer one?
You'd be doing a shorter one.
Exactly right. Spot on. So that's the shutter speed. That's, in my opinion, that's the most simple to understand. It's pretty self-explanatory.
Awesome.
The next one is the aperture. That's the inside the lens. Probably can't really see it because it's a modern lens. See that little opening in there? I wonder if you can see it in the camera.
Yeah.
There's a little opening inside.
Yeah. making that.
Yeah, it's like the iris of an eye.
Yeah.
And it's basically the aperture is inside the lens, and it's the hole that's letting light into the camera. So obviously the wider open it is, more light can get in through the lens into the sensor.
Yeah.
The smaller it is, less light is going to get in, obviously. So it goes, let's say, f2.8, f4, f5.6, f8. I don't know, it's a bit more confusing with these because it doesn't just double, but basically the f number is just how wide or small the circle is.
Yeah.
So same as this, a smaller number, f2.8, means it's open wider, which means there's more light. If you go down to f8 or f16, that's a really small hole in the lens, so less light's coming in. So let's say you're at f4 and the photo's too bright. What would you change? Which way would you go?
You'd be going down, wouldn't you? So
Yeah.
you'd go to 5.6 and
Exactly
see how it looks
right.
then.
Exactly right. Let less light in.
Yep.
Or you could keep that the same and bring down the shutter speed, like make that faster. So it all balances out. You can have more of one, less of the other, to get the exposure that you want.
So would you usually play around with these? Say if it was a bit too bright, you'd bring one down, and then if that made it too dark, you'd put it back and bring this one down a little bit.
Yeah, exactly right. What I would usually do is set two of them where I want, depending on what you want out of the photo. And we'll go through what each of these does to affect an image.
Awesome.
But I would set two of them and then just play with one depending on what
on
what you want from the photo.
Yeah.
So that's also pretty easy to understand. Probably the most difficult of the three to understand is the ISO. That basically means, in a nutshell, how sensitive the camera sensor is to light. It's not as clean cut as the other ones, but put simply, if you have a low ISO, let's say you've got ISO 100, 200, 400, 800. So if you have it up to 800, the camera is going to be very sensitive, and it means you can have less of the other ones. So you might have, at 800, you probably have to have 1/125th and f5.6. You have to close the aperture and do a fast shutter, because 800 means you don't need as much light because the camera's really sensitive.
Yeah.
The analogy that I always taught was like a bucket. Like imagine, you've got a bucket that's collecting water. The aperture gives you a bigger cloud to drop water in the bucket, so there's more water coming in.
Yeah.
The shutter speed allows more time for the rain to fill the bucket.
Yeah.
But the ISO is like a bigger bucket.
Yeah.
So a bit confusing now, but the sensitivity to light. So the smaller number, less sensitive, larger number, more sensitive.
So say if it was too bright, again, you could bring this down.
Exactly right. Yeah. So let's say we had ISO 400. 400, let's say f5.6 and 1/60th of a second. Let's say it was too bright still. What would you do? You could affect any one of those three things. What would you do?
Any of them down.
Yeah.
So would it be better off, like you said, to keep two the same and just maybe play around with the aperture?
Yeah, sure.
Maybe bring that down a little bit.
Yep. So which way would you push it if you wanted it?
Down to f8?
Spot on, man. Spot on. Excellent. That's the basics. That's
usually, which one would you go to first?
So it depends what you want, and we'll go through that now, because each one of these things is going to affect your photo a little bit differently. I found this really cool chart online. I need to find out who I can credit this to, because I didn't make this chart, but it's really helpful. The shutter speed that we spoke about first, obviously, you can have a really quick one or you can have a slow one. When it's really quick, it's only open for a split second, so you're capturing a very fast moment in time. So if let's look at the middle here, 1/60th, literally dividing a second into 60 parts, and you're getting one of those parts. So if someone's moving too quickly, you're not going to be able to see them. They're going to be a little bit blurry. But if someone's moving really quickly, you can speed up the shutter speed and just get that snap second, and they're not going to be blurry anymore. If this person's running at 1/60th, at 1/1000th, they're going to be sharp and in focus because you're stopping that motion. Let's say you got...
for say like if you were to be shooting motorbikes or motorbike riding or something like that, I'm guessing you would just keep the shutter speed all the way down and you'd start to play around with the aperture or the ISO first.
Spot on, man. Spot on. So if you're shooting something very fast, you need a very fast shutter speed, or it can be a creative decision as well. If you want to show that a bike is moving fast, you might slow it down to get a little bit of blur, because that shows that it's moving across the frame. Because if you just shoot a motorbike that's still, even if it's like, maybe turning a corner or something, it doesn't show as much motion in the photo. It's just a still frame. For all we know, it could just be sitting there.
Yeah.
So it's a creative decision as well as a technical one. That's pretty self-explanatory. I think that's the easiest one, which is why I chose it first. The other one is aperture. So like we said, it's how big the opening is on the lens, letting light in. So if you've got a really wide aperture, it means you've got a small number, like we spoke about here. A wide aperture means you have a very shallow depth of field. So if I take a photo of you now at f2, your face will be in focus, but the background will start to blur.
Yep.
If you close it down more and more and more, you can see in these little diagrams, subjects in focus, backgrounds out of focus. If you're shooting a landscape, you don't really want that. You want to be able to see everything sharp and in focus. You want the detail in everything. So you'd have to close it down further, because the smaller the aperture, the less light gets in, but the more you have in focus in the scene. So let's say you're at f8 and you can see your subject in the front on the motorbike, but you want to see the ocean behind him.
So you'd start to bring it down a little bit and maybe go to f16 or f22.
Perfect. You're a very fast learner.
That's right.
Pretty self-explanatory. Particularly once you start to shoot, you'll see the difference. You'll change the F number and you'll see the background change as you do it.
Yeah.
It's a good feedback thing. It's very rewarding and easy to see. So the last one, ISO.
This one looks a bit more.
Look, to be honest, not too much. But it's just because it's like a digital thing.
Yeah.
It's not as easy to explain mechanically, basically. So with the ISO, your camera becomes more sensitive to light, but it also becomes more grainy. It adds more digital noise from a digital sensor. So ideally, for most situations, you would want to keep it as low as possible for the cleanest, best photo. Grain is okay as well. Like I said, it's a creative choice.
Yep.
So you might want a little bit of a film look, or you might want just a bit of something to make your photo a little more interesting. Just give it a bit of texture or something. Maybe you don't mind a little bit more grain. But this is sort of the thing that you would change. You would want to keep it as low as possible. It's sort of like a last resort to change the ISO, I guess. Yeah. Because it's going to reduce the quality of the photo. But if it means you get the shot, it's absolutely worth it. You shouldn't miss it because you're worried about a bit of noise.
Yeah.
It's just the last thing. So let's say you wanted the best quality photo. Let's say you're at ISO 800. You're shooting the motorbike on the edge of the cliff with the beach behind. You're at ISO 800. You're at 1/60th of a second at f8. So you need to get a little bit more lighting because it's a bit too grainy.
Yeah.
The ISO is a bit too high. So if you wanted to drop that, what else would you have to do if you're dropping this value?
Would you have to bring the others up?
Yeah, you'd have to let more light in somewhere else.
Yeah.
So what could you do in that situation? If you
weren't too concerned about, say, the ocean in the background, you could bring the aperture up and bring the ISO down.
Exactly right. You could bring the ISO down to 400 and open up the aperture a little bit to let more light in. Conversely, if your subject is just standing there, if you don't have to freeze any motion, if they're not moving or you're not trying to tell a story that way, you can just open up the shutter even more.
Yeah.
Because a person standing there, you can easily shoot that at, let's say, 1/30th of a second, and it's not gonna change the background. So, like I was kind of saying, it is a technical thing, but it's a creative decision as well. If you still want that background in focus, then maybe it's better to change the shutter speed.
Yep.
If you don't care about the background, you can change the aperture. It's all technical, and it doesn't matter at all on paper until you start shooting. Like, none of this is useful without putting it into practice.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk a little bit more practically now. Cool. So let's go through some composition quickly.
Awesome.
This is the sort of thing that is harder to teach, and it's especially hard to teach sitting at a desk.
Yeah.
You kind of have to get out and actually do it. But there's a few rules. We were talking about this at work the other day. There's a few sort of like rules of thumb of composition that are going to just set you up to think about your photography differently. The most obvious one that you probably come across is rule of thirds.
I have.
So
I've seen that a bit.
Yeah, if you divide the frame, the rectangle frame, divide it into a grid both ways. Let's just draw it. Rule of thirds is as simple as if you're shooting a portrait of someone, you don't put them smack bang in the middle, because symmetry is another, compositional decision, but symmetry in a lot of instances is kind of boring.
Yeah.
So you put them off to one side. We spoke about even on the iPhone, it's got grids to line up rule of thirds.
Yeah.
That's a pretty easy one. Self-explanatory. Like I said, symmetry is also a creative decision. Maybe you do want it to be symmetrical, so you put someone smack bang in the middle. What else have we got? You can do, you might want to think about framing your shot, which means you put something, let's say I'm shooting a portrait of you in Byron Bay, and you're in like you're in a forest. You might want to find a bush or a tree and put that in the foreground with the leaves around, and looks like you're looking through the bush. So there's something in the foreground, something in the background.
Yep.
Shows depth.
Yep.
If you can frame your subject, it makes them stand out. It gives like it gives a visual cue to the photo to look in to where your focus is.
Yeah. I saw another one. There's a lot of like van life diaries pages I follow, and obviously out the back of their van they'll have the beach,
that's
but
perfect example.
Yeah.
And you can see the inside of the van.
Yeah. And but then it obviously out in the background there's say like the beach or something of importance as well.
You're already thinking like a photographer, picking that up, because the inside of the van is probably a little bit darker, I would guess, and it provides context to the beach, and it just gives depth to the photo, because instead of just the beach, you get a larger idea for what the story is.
Yeah.
They're sitting in the van at the end of the day. They're lying down, maybe having a cup of tea or something, looking out on the beach.
Yeah.
It just gives context, depth, and it really provides a better story, a deeper story to the photo. So framing is a really good one as well. I'm glad you said that. You could even use negative space. Like, let's say negative space is just like extra room in the photo with not much going on, but it helps to tell the story.
Yeah.
Let's say we're in Byron Bay and we're in a forest again, and I want to take a picture of you, and there's a big, beautiful tree. Like, I might put your head and shoulders in the bottom of the frame. Your frame is like this. You got this big, like, lush tree in the background, but I've got little Lou down here with his head and shoulders. So all this extra space in the photo tells a story about how big the tree is, about how big the space is and lush the space is, what's going on.
Yeah.
That's a creative decision as well. Just because you're taking a portrait doesn't mean your face has to take up the entire frame of the photo.
Yeah.
Negative space is a cool one, and it's a real like trendy Instagram thing to do.
Yeah.
You might see someone like a nice portrait of someone against like a wall of flowers, or even a brick wall or something.
Yeah.
And they're just a small part of the frame. Or in music photography, it's really big as well. You might have someone in the side of the frame, and it's sort of side on, and the rest of the frame is just crowd, so you can see how big the room or the stage is. That's another really easy win. negative space. It's something I use in my
awesome.
photos. The only other one that I thought of that would be a real easy win is just to think of different perspectives. So the natural thing is you pick up a camera and the height that you're standing at, you take a photo, right? Let's say you're on a beach and the sun's setting and the waves are rolling in, the tide's out but the waves are rolling in, and you want to show like all the sunset, you want to show how deep and long the beach is. If you're standing up from the angle that you are looking down at the beach, it's not going to be the most impressive. You're going to get less horizon, you're going to get more sand, less water.
Yeah.
But if you were to change your perspective, duck down low, get a little bit less sand, more of the water, more of that horizon, make it seem bigger. My kind of general rule of thumb is when in doubt, get low, look at it from a lower perspective, make things look more grand, more large, and just change the way your audience is going to see things, because eye level is not always the best way to look at something.
That is a great tip, because whenever I do, even on my phone, I always just straight from head height, just like
it's natural.
That's it.
Everyone does it because that's what you're looking at.
Yeah.
But I think when in doubt, try getting low. Try getting higher, try shooting higher, but just different perspective is going to change the composition drastically.
Yeah, awesome.
So those are the. I'll write you a little cheat sheet. I'll write a few things that
awesome.
you can like maybe take a photo on your phone or something and have with you.
Yep.
But those are some of the basics that are going to help you think about composition differently. Like composition, like anything in photography, they're just rules. Like they are meant to be broken. Like you don't have to stick to anything. Everything you do is a creative decision, and it's about how you want to create a picture. It's all up to you. But those are going to help you start to think about seeing the world differently. So composition is very, very important for photography. But it sounds like you got a basic grip on it, particularly because you consume these sort of photos.
I'm constantly looking.
Yeah. If you are
scrolling
looking
through
and constantly inspired, then you know what you like.
Yeah.
And you can try and replicate that, which is really important as well.
The one thing that would be good is to do it with on a camera like this, where they do have, say, the third lines in there as well, and all of that. It'd be really, really nice, and especially the everything to do with the lighting I've never done before either.
Yeah.
And I'm just
The last thing we're going to talk about today, because I don't want to just destroy your mind with the information, but you've picked it all up very, very easily so far, is just being comfortable with the equipment that you're using.
Yeah.
This one came up in the Big Pants Photo Legends Club last night. Shout out to Rui from Portugal, one of my favorite subscribers, who said that this would be a good tip for Lou. So thank you, Rui. That's a really hard name to say. I've been practicing, by the way.
I love it.
So basically, if you are comfortable with the piece of equipment in your hands, it frees up your mind, and you don't have to think about settings and everything, because it'll become second nature after a while. So very quickly, we're going to run through how to change the settings on your camera. We're going to get you shooting in manual purely because it's going to challenge you.
Yeah.
You can shoot in automatic or one of the different automatic modes, but like we were saying, everything is going to be a creative decision from now on. So we don't want to leave it to the camera, because the camera's just going to guess.
Yeah.
And it's not going to give you the same vision that you have in your head.
Awesome.
So going through the camera quickly, you'll notice there's a bunch of dials and knobs. You're never going to look at the screen, probably never going to look at the screen for composure. You're not going to use live view mode like you would one of these cameras. Everything you do is going to be through the viewfinder. And that's just because, first of all, it's quicker. If you're looking through the viewfinder, you'll learn to change settings as you see it. Secondly, you'll see it more true to the eye, because you're actually looking at the scene and not what it looks like on the screen,
just a digital,
which can kind of trick you sometimes.
Yeah.
But that's beside the point. So we've got it in manual mode. The way you hold a camera is kind of like a handshake, I guess. You wrap the hand around it, or like a gun almost, like that, exactly right. And the lens you hold underhand like this to support the weight, and it gives you a nice steady base for taking your picture.
Feels good.
Yeah. A lot of people do it like this.
Yeah.
Which is, I don't want to say wrong, but it's just a lot less stable. And
A bit
that's
more fidgety than...
yeah.
Yeah.
In my opinion, that's the quickest way to spot a rookie photographer. If they're holding the camera like this and trying to do it like that, because it's just less stable and less professional, in my opinion.
Fair enough.
Cool. So we've got the dial onto M, I'm pretty sure, on the top.
We do.
Maybe I'll film this here. So show us the top of the camera for a second, Lou. So we've got the dial on M. I knock this all the time and change it. So if your settings are weird, you know why. We'll keep it on M. And let's have a look at the back of the camera again. If you press the shutter down halfway,
where am I?
the shutter, sorry, that's the shutter button.
Yep.
So it'll bring up the settings here. So do you remember we spoke about the shutter speed? It's going to be a fraction of a second. So we've got 1/200th of a second.
Yep.
f6.3 is your aperture.
Yep.
ISO is here at 200. So to change the shutter speed, let's go through this quickly. So the shutter speed you control with this dial here.
Okay. Yeah.
Can you see this little like bar across the bottom here?
Yep.
I'll see if we can see that on camera. It's a little scale, and as you change the settings, that scale there is going to shift.
Bring it up and down.
This is called your light meter. So this is the camera guessing as to what a good exposure is. It will help you. You can even see it as you're looking through the camera, and it'll say, in this case, because it's on the lower side, oops.
So if I was to change the aperture, that would bring that little bar up as well.
Yeah, see how it's got a plus over this side and a minus over this side?
Yeah.
This is the camera saying that it thinks it's going to be a little bit overexposed. So if we take a quick picture, it's probably right. It's a little bit blown out. So if we drop the shutter speed, make it faster, it's saying that's probably going to be about right. So if we take a photo, there's a bit more detail in the sky and
just
whatever
looks
else.
A little bit cleaner.
Yeah. So shutter speed is the easiest to change. It's just this dial here.
Awesome.
And it should be easy to change even with your eye up to the camera. If you do that, if you put your eye up, you'll see the little controls inside the camera.
Yeah, just down the bottom.
Yeah, if you...
And so that's all the way over on the left.
The little light
meter?
meter?
Shutter speed.
Oh, the shutter speed, yeah. It'll say, 400, 800, whatever. Yep. So the shutter speed's easy, just the dial. The aperture, we're going to change that. There's a little button on top that has like a plus minus. See here?
Yeah.
And all the buttons should be laid out so you can access them while you've got your eye up to the camera. You shouldn't have to like move your hand away from the grip.
So you should be able to just flick in between them.
Yeah, exactly right. So to change the aperture here, we've got this little button, the plus minus button, and we're going to roll the dial once we're holding that button. So this button up here, click that, roll the dial, that's going to change the aperture.
Awesome.
Without it, shutter speed, right?
Yeah. Awesome.
The only thing that's hard about a low level camera is sometimes you have to go into the menu to change things. So to change the ISO, you need to click this little button here, this little I button, and that will give you these other functions. But the main one is the ISO, and you have to just change that like this.
Okay.
So I'm going to throw you in the deep end a little bit now. I'm going to do a shitty exposure.
Yeah.
And you're going to show me how you would correct it. So this is 1/400th of a second. I don't know if this is going to show up on camera. 1/400th of a second, f7.1, ISO 200. So I think this is going to be a little bit underexposed. Let's underexpose it even more. So ISO, 1/1000th of a second, f7.1 is your aperture, ISO 200. If we take a photo, it's going to be a little bit too dark. So if I give that to you,
okay,
and you half press the button, it's going to show you your settings. What would you do if you want to make it brighter?
I think firstly, bring the aperture down.
Sure, yeah.
Maybe.
So you can see that's even a little diagram showing you
it does.
How it's opening up a little bit. Yep. So take a photo when you think. When you want to give it a go. Are you putting the shutter speed down as well?
I am.
Yep.
So then put the shutter speed down as well.
Alrighty. See how that is. Oh, you can already see it's back in the middle of the light meter, which is a good little, cheat.
Indication.
So yeah, already it's a lot better. If you wanted to change the ISO,
that is a nice little cheat button there though.
Yeah,
It's good.
It does help. Want to change the ISO? Do you remember how to do that one?
What is it?
It's just this little
That
I button here.
Button first.
And you click
Beautiful.
that. Yep.
And then we can. So when it has that setting there, LO
Yeah.
0.3.
I wouldn't worry about it too much.
So is 200 usually the lowest?
200's the base for this camera, yeah. It's a
Yeah.
little bit of an older camera, so 200 would be the base. So cool, so take a photo as it is. Are you able to read the settings and tell me what they say
So
by looking
you've
at that?
got 1/15 of a second.
Yeah,
You've got 3.5 aperture.
yeah,
And ISO of 1000.
okay. And what do you, just off the top of your head, what do you think that's going to be? What do you think the photo's going to look like?
The camera's going to be quite sensitive to
Yeah.
light, so it's going to bring in a lot more.
Yeah,
So would it be brighter?
it's going to be
Brighter
very
and
bright, yeah. Give it a
bit
go.
grainy?
Maybe.
Wow.
Really bright.
Very, very bright.
And remember what we spoke about? That's it, perfect.
There we go.
Yeah. So change it how you will, change it however you think, and let me know what the settings you choose are.
First thing I'm going to do is bring it back down to 200.
Yeah, the ISO.
I am.
Yeah, I think that's a good starting place because you want it as low as possible in most situations.
And then I'm going to have an aperture of 4.
Or just change one thing at a time, I guess, and
Yep.
see how it looks.
Alright, so I'll do bring that back to there.
Yeah.
It's come down a little bit.
Yeah.
A little bit.
Need some more?
A little bit more.
Cool. So probably the next thing I would change is the shutter because
Yep.
what's it at now? 1/15 or something?
1/15 of a
Yeah,
second.
that's pretty slow. That means you're probably going to get, from your hands, you're probably going to get a little bit of shake.
Yep.
If you want to get a nice, clean, sharp photo, I would probably bring that
So
up.
at
a bit.
1/15, if I was, say it was windy or something, you would be able to see it in the photo.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah.
As a rule of thumb, whatever the focal length of the lens is, and if you look at the top of the lens, it's at 18 millimeters now.
Yep.
Try and be double the focal length to get a
Okay.
nice still shot. But
Yep.
it
Changes.
it changes.
Uh,
At least double is what I mean.
yeah. So I've got this at 200 now.
Okay, so here
The
you go.
aperture's still at 5.
5, yep.
It's looking a little bit better.
Yeah. There you go. Does it need any more tweaks, or is that pretty good?
It's not bad. It still says it's a little bit bright, so I could either bring the shutter speed or the aperture.
Yeah. Also, just remember the light meter is the camera guessing. It's like I said, it's a creative decision. So you might like to have a little brighter, or you might like to have it a little darker. The camera's just going to give you like its best guess. of where it should
So
be.
you're not trying to match that perfectly.
Yeah. So you don't always have to look at the light meter, but it's a good,
Just a
little
good
cheat
indication.
sheet. Yeah.
In saying that, I would say it even needed to be a little bit brighter then, or have
Okay.
a little bit more light in.
Cool.
So
Do it to it.
Okay. Not too bad.
Yeah.
Not too bad.
It's okay.
Not too bad.
Yeah. You're doing it, man. You're doing it.
With things like this though, so for
Come on,
instance
see it.
on our side of the room, you might not be able to see it, but you've got the sunlight coming in over on our left,
Mhm.
and you've got just a dark corner in there. Is basically, would you be looking for composition to change that to sort of counteract that, or is
Yeah. Yeah.
So maybe you'd be moving to there.
If the sunlight is blowing out this side of the room,
Yep.
maybe it's not a good angle to shoot.
Yeah.
Maybe you would, move to the middle, get a bit lower, so you can get the computer in the foreground,
Yep.
the white backdrop in the background,
Yeah.
and a nice even light. So it's good to hear you thinking about that already. We were only talking about settings, but you're already thinking about exposure.
In that last photo, it just was a little bit bright over on the right, and
Yeah.
then you could see a bit darker on the left. But
And
yeah.
You're already ahead of the game, I think.
Thanks,
we were
man.
just talking purely about settings. But anyway, let's sort of wrap it up there because I think that's a really good head start of where you should be.
I'm excited.
Yeah, I'm really excited.
I'm very
for you.
excited.
You've got the basics already. Like it's only been like 20 minutes or something. You've got the basics.
But that was fantastic to hear. I mean, I would have been off to Byron Bay just shooting everything in sight.
Yeah.
But that stuff definitely makes you think a little bit more about it.
Yeah.
Which is nice.
I'll write a few notes down and send them to you just in case. I don't think you'll need them, but it's nice to have something if you get stuck.
Just to have it there.
But that's awesome, man. I'm really happy with that. So we're going to leave it there. What we're going to do is sometime in the next... Are you going away for 2 weeks?
Going away for 1 week.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Well, sometimes in the next few weeks, we're going to get Lou in again, and we're going to do like a little bit of a follow-up. We'll go through the photos that he's taken. We'll maybe start to look at some retouching, some post, which I think you'll really enjoy as well. It's something that I really love
The
doing.
editing side.
The editing side of thing. We'll do some
Nice.
Lightroom, and we'll see how he's progressing. So thank you guys so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed this video. I'm going to add Louis to the Big Pants Photo Legends Club, which is the Facebook group that we have.
Honoured.
If you haven't already, join up. We have just cool camera related discussions, and if you have any issues on whatever, everyone's pretty happy to jump in there and help you out. And we'll add him to the group, and we're going to track his progress. I'll also, what's your Instagram?
Louis Q.
Louis Q.
LEWYQU.
Pop it up on screen as well, so you can follow Louis on Instagram and follow along his journey. And we'll track his progress, and we'll see you guys in the next episode.
Beautiful.
Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, give it a big fat thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.
Love it.
Awesome. Easy.